right, ladies and gentlemen, we've got the CSGO AWPers tier list here. Are you ready to see who's the best AWPer of all time? Could it be Simple? Could it be Device? Could it be someone else? Maybe even ZywOo. You never know. Anyone could be the best of all time with the AWP. Let's find out. Whether we're rating current or prime is going to depend a little bit on where they are. I'm going to try and balance a little bit between peak and longevity, right? I'm not just going to go like highest peak only or longevity only. I feel like you have to balance a little bit between peak and longevity to have a reasonable list. All right, obviously Simple has to be the GOAT. Clearly, it's like there's really no argument. You could say Devices had more longevity, not even. You could say Devices had more team success, but that's not really that important when it comes to who's the better AWPer, right? Device is the clear second. You can make an argument for ZywOo based off of like peak performance, but I'm trying to balance a little bit between peak, like how high the peak is and how long the peak is, right? And Device has just been so good for so long that I think you can't really put him below ZywOo. I think in a couple of years it'll be arguable, and then, you know, as long as ZywOo maintains, and in a couple of years it'll be arguable, right? But I don't think you can put him over top of Device at the moment. I think you have to put him a bit below. And these are players that I would say Simple and ZywOo are players who, they're kind of game-changing players. If you look at other players, like even Kenny S's prime, his stats weren't that insane. There was a little bit more to it, but his stat, like ZywOo and Simple kind of break stats. Someone did a breakdown of MVP percentages. So breaking down the 10 highest MVP players. ZywOo broke the MVP stat because ZywOo has 10 MVP wins in 5 tournament wins, which means he wins the MVP medal 200% of the time that his team wins the tournament, because he's won the MVP medal as the loser several times, obviously 5 times it would seem. Whereas most other players like Device, I think his MVP win percent is like 60. Simple, it's like 110% or something. ZywOo's at 200%, right? That's like the individual incredible level that these players hit, right? And then Device has just been so good as a shutdown AWPer for so long. Really, if you're gonna learn AWPing, you want to kind of learn it from Device more than anyone else, especially Device on Astralis, yeah? Then I'm just gonna throw the players on the list that are really good, but not quite at the level of those players. So we've got JW, Guardian, Kenny S, and there's one other player, Fallen. Kenny S, a lot of people would argue his peak is right up there with Simple and ZywOo. But his peak was like 6 months. Like genuinely, his true peak was like 6 or 7 months. It was so fleeting. If you were arguing just peak, you would probably put Kenny S in S tier, right? His peak was 6 fucking months. Simple is like 5 years at an extremely high level. Device is like 7 years at an extremely high level. ZywOo is 2 years at just an unbelievable level, right? I think he is notably not as effective as any of these 3 players in the long run, and I don't think it's particularly close, even if he's had a really high peak. The argument you could make is that these 3 players get a lot of kills with rifles. However, I don't think that says anything about their AWPing. Like Simple gets like 50% of his kills with the AWP, I think. Device and ZywOo are both like, I think a little, like around 50% of their kills with the AWP. However, typically what happens is, in my opinion, players that are bad with rifles get more like 60 or 70% with the AWP, as opposed to players that are like better AWPers. I don't think how good you are as an AWPer necessarily factors in as much as how bad you are with other rifles. Like JDM is at like 70%, and nobody says he's an insane AWPer. He just could not fucking shoot back with the rifle. How about how Kenny eventually led to the AWP nerf? I would argue that JW actually was more to do with the AWP nerf than Kenny S. In my opinion, it's hard to remember because it's a long time ago, but I think the way JW was using the AWP was, he wasn't as oppressive as Kenny S. However, I think it was, the way JW was playing was more abusing that part of the AWP where you're moving while scoped in. But like, guys, just like spoiler, by the way, people overrate the AWP nerf by a lot. I don't think the AWP nerf really is what changed the way players played with the AWP, or what nerfed Kenny S entirely. It was a small change, but you weren't trying to peek out on people while scoped in anyways. You weren't running around scoped in. It wasn't a fucking scout. You would still try and peek out and scope in at roughly the same time, right? Your goal when you're peeking out with an AWP is to peek out and scope in as you're like already stopping. so that you don't lose any of your speed from scoping, because when you scope, you instantly lose like half of your speed. Kenny S didn't go from the best player in the world to like mediocre because of an op nerf. Guardian is almost like device light. Guardian was really, really, really good for a really long time. He's another player that if you like watch earlier Guardian games like 2016, 2017, 2015, that's like good opping. He was a little bit aggressive, right? But that's like very good opping. I would call Guardian like the original positional opper. The trouble is like, where do we put Fallen here? Because Fallen, they've talked about Fallen having the highest peak. I mean, I think Device said this, that Fallen was the scariest player to play against of all time, even more so than Simple. Fallen had an incredibly high peak and was insanely aggressive while doing so. I'd say he's roughly even with Kenny S. Pretty hard to say between Guardian and JW. It really depends what you're looking at, really. JW was super oppressive. JW in his prime was still a player that would occasionally give the op to Olaf if he wasn't feeling it. I don't think JW was necessarily a player where if you had him at his prime, even then you would have wanted him to be your only op threat. I think Olaf being an op threat was actually a significant factor. I'd say above Kenny because it's also an IGL. Yeah, but I mean, if we're looking at an op or tier list, I don't think we can factor that in. I think it's unfair to factor that in. Then I think there's like a clear drop from here, because it's hard to say who you would put after this. So if we want to put Oskar on the list, he might get dethroned at the top of B. I mean, I'm sure he will, but Oskar was really fucking good for a while. He could be C tier. I think he's B tier. I think he peaked a couple of years in the top 10. Oskar was actually pretty nuts for a little while. People kind of forget how good Oskar was for a while, and I think he's still kind of good. I haven't seen Oskar in a while. Skadoodle's a little bit hard to rate because I feel like Skadoodle had like a couple of good tournaments. I kind of feel like people overrate Skadoodle a little bit because they won a major and he had like one really like solid major performance. But honestly, Skadoodle, after AWPer, I don't think Skadoodle was ever that amazing. Cirque's just really fucking good. I mean, he's kind of fallen off a little bit. Obviously, all of EG has fallen off pretty massively. Skadoodle was never a threat in C9. He was always an okay positional opper, but he missed shots a little bit more than he should have been missing shots. So Cirque, I mean, he was really fucking good. I think 2019 was his year where he was fucking really, really nuts. All of EG has fallen off. He's been a shadow of how good he was. I think Nitro as an opper, it's hard to say because I never thought Nitro was a very good opper. He was also just not given really the setup to necessarily do all that well as an opper, because I feel like more often than not, Nitro would op in the situations where opping isn't fun. So what I mean is like stuff like T-side nuke, T-side Inferno. Situations where it's not enjoyable to op, but someone has to do it occasionally so that you have that threat. That's kind of what I think of with Nitro. So he wasn't like, usually other players would op on like stuff like CT Inferno or like CT Train, like shit like that. I always feel like spots where the op can really dominate are spots where Nitro oftentimes wasn't opping, and he felt kind of more like a fill opper than anything else. So as an opper itself, I feel like I might even tend to rate him C because he was good, but he was never that great. I don't know, Liquid during their run, I don't think they relied on his op like much at all. So 2019 when they had their run, he had 20% of his kills with the op. I feel like just based off of that stat, 20% of his kills with the op, most oppers are up around 50%. I think I have to put Nitro and C off of that. JDM, listen man, I'm sorry JDM, but you're just going to have to be F tier. You got to compare to someone, and I don't think JDM was ever all that good as an opper. He was a player, he needed to have the op to do well at all, and if he didn't have the op, he was not really a productive member of the team. And then even when he had the op, I don't think JDM was ever all that fucking good. JDM deserves D. Yeah, but the reality is like there are worse oppers than Nitro and Skadoodle, and these are B and C. So like you have to like kind of compare. Next, Smooya. Smooya I want to put in C also actually. The thing is, Smooya I think could be a top 20 player. In fact, I think even in 2021, I think he could have been a top 20 player. He's just not been on teams to be able to showcase that. You could make an argument for Smooya maybe being in B, but he's just not been on teams to showcase how good he is. Individually, I think he has the possibility to be up around Cirque and Woxic. So hopefully you can see him up higher in the list if we remake one of these in a year. You know, I think he's done pretty well on Fnatic. Yeah. Cadian, fuck. Cadian's a hard one. Cadian is one of the ones that's really hard to rank because right now, online in 2020, he was a key component of why Heroic did well. He is a core component of Heroic's success. However, on LAN, Cadian, I think he has one of the worst changes between LAN and online of anyone. And it's tough because opping on LAN is definitely different than online. 1.01 online. 1.13. I mean, that's a pretty big fucking difference. KPR 0.63, DPR, he's basically running 1 KD as an opper. In this era, you really can't afford to be running that. So the problem is Cadian is really fucking good online. He's a star, in my opinion, he's a star of Heroic online. But on LAN, you can definitely see the fucking difference. And he did have a lot of years, like if you go back, he was playing the game in like 2017, right? 2017, he has good stats, in fact. Cadian has definitely been on his redemption arc. I don't know how you necessarily rate him because of that fall off at LAN when things really matter. And to be honest, like watching the major, you could definitely see that he was doing these like scoped in walk re-aggressions that you see online. But on LAN, the ping difference, it doesn't feel like that much. But a lot of these peaks I would see Cadian do, like against G2, there's a few rounds where you could for sure see that online, this scoped in re-aggression into an angle, he would get a kill. Like there's a rifler holding the angle. You all have been in this situation. An opper, banana on Inferno, walk peaks to clear banana in the middle of the round. You're holding it, he just kills you. Happens a lot. Online, you die there. On LAN, you're gonna get the kill there. If you're got good aim and G2 was on point, you're gonna get the kill there. So it's hard to say if he's D or C because online he's like B. Online he's like B tier. On LAN he's definitely D or below. I think I gotta put Katie in D tier. Chrisj, D tier. I'm sorry. Was Chrisj ever like great? Has he ever been on HLTV top 10? No. Or top 20? No. I mean Chrisj's been okay forever. He's kind of been perma okay. He's been perma decent. I'm confused by people loving Chrisj because he's so consistent. Spoiler, being consistently mediocre isn't a good thing. You know, I'd rather a player that has flashes of brilliance and flashes of shitness than a player that is consistently not great. The few names that I'm thinking of that aren't on this list, we've got Shiro. Shiro's another one that's a little bit hard to rate. It's a little bit hard to put into a clear category because Gambit is pretty new, because they're primarily playing online. Shiro's LAN stats are actually pretty good. I figured the major would have actually shit on his LAN stats, but his stats actually on LAN are quite good, even with the loss to Na'Vi. I think there's the only reasonable place to put Shiro, given the way I've set up the rest of this list, is you have to put Shiro in B tier. There's actually nowhere else to put Shiro. Because he's not a legend of the game like any of the guys in A tier. We're missing Brokey and we're missing Woxic. Woxic is also clear B tier. Woxic had some really good fucking moments. Woxic was really fucking good for a while, right? He, 12th on HLTV top 10, it looks like. Woxic was really fucking good for a fleeting moment. But I think he also has to be B tier. Jame also has to be in B, and for the reason of we're adding too many players that are clearly better than Skadoodle, I have to put Skadoodle in C. So right now, in B tier, we've got Shiro, Jame, Woxic, Oskar, Cirque. I think those are all players that for different reasons you can say are like, if you rate their careers, I think you can rate them all in fairly similar categories. I think Brokey has to be in C. He's got a lot of potential, and I think he's a great player. If you want to say Brokey is a B tier player, tell me make an argument, someone, for why Brokey should be above Woxic, who was like top 10 HLTV at some point, right? Should be above Cirque, who was 7th, I think, HLTV, Oskar, multiple HLTVs, Shiro, or Jame. In my opinion, that's how you have to make an argument for Brokey to be B tier. You have to beat out one of those players. Brokey and Smoothie are in a very similar boat. I actually agree with that. I think you've got it. I think Brokey could be really, really good. I think he hasn't necessarily been given every opportunity to showcase how good he is yet. I think in the years to come, I think he could end up being higher in this list. In terms of like peak performance and prime of these players, I don't see anyone on this list that he's like clearly beating out. If you see the way other people do lists, it's like, okay, Simple's the GOAT, and then what we're gonna do is we're gonna put another player in the GOAT, and then ZywOo's also pretty good. And then, well, Device, I mean, if we put ZywOo and Kenny S up there, then Device should be up there too. And then, okay, so now we've got these players here, and let's just put, you know, I think these players are also good. And then we've got these players, and then we've got JDM at the bottom. This is how I feel like other people make their fucking shit lists, where they're like, I just don't want to offend anyone, so I'm going to put everyone in the same fucking tier, and that way there's no real argument, and I'm not actually saying anything. Kenny S has an argument to be higher. I don't think JW has an argument to be higher. I would argue JW B tier more than JW S tier, because even when JW had his true prime, Fnatic have talked about this, where JW wouldn't be feeling it, and he would tell Olaf to op. Literally, they've talked about this. This is something that happened, because JW wasn't the guy that you could rely on all the time. He was super unique. He was a fucking game changer. I think he was a game changer. The way he opted was super unique and really fucking oppressive. Really oppressive. As an opper, I think there were things that were missing. Sometimes you would see him go on the rifle because he wasn't fucking feeling it. This is also personal bias maybe, because JW is one of my favorite players of all time. I started playing CS like 2014, or CSGO. I mean, I took a break when CSGO was first released. So like, I really got into CSGO again in 2014, and JW was a player that I really enjoyed. What's the argument for Fallen being an A tier, not B tier? Fallen literally has been talked about by Device, I believe it was Device, that he was the scariest opper to play against in his prime, and he was fucking nuts in his prime. I believe the only reasons I was in the GOAT tier because he doesn't have enough years in the pro scene. Honestly, that's actually a lot of it. I think if ZywOo was as good as he is now for another 2 years, I would put him as below Simple, but in the same tier. You know what I mean? Like, he would be close enough to Simple that I'd keep him in the same tier. Kenny S and Guardian had way better peaks and way better longevity. Guardian was number 2 in 2015? Holy fuck. Forgot about that. Yeah, I think you guys might be right. I think JW maybe should be B tier. I don't know, man. JW's like, he was so unique when he played, dude. Like, no other opper plays the way JW did. I don't think any other opper ever has or ever will. Like, JW was so unique. JW was so unique in the way he played, dude. How is JW unique? I think the best way to describe it would be like battle opping. Just playing hyper aggressive with the op. Like, hyper aggressive with the op. I mean, the CZ was completely busted. But the pullout time of the CZ, you could argue, was done because of how fucking ridiculous that JW was with the CZ. Because he would play so close range with the op, and then it's just like, oh, something's gone wrong? Let me just real quick pocket AK, brat, pocket AK, oh, op's back out, oh, I whiffed with the op, pocket AK, brat. It was fucking ridiculous, dude. It was such a fucking joke, dude. Unfucking real. Flom, like, I don't even want to rate Flom, okay? I'm sorry. Like, Flom is cool. I like Flom. He's like a good guy, but like, it's an offer tier list of all time, dude. Like, I feel like this is a no-win situation. Rating Flom on this list is such a no-win situation, dude. Jesus. I'm sorry, Corey. I don't know how you spell Corey. I'm guessing it's Corey. Shazam's got the I'm sorry Corey tier list. If you haven't seen that, it's worthy. It's worthy of a look. I always thought Shazam had the potential to be really good. He just never showed it, you know? Shazam really never showed it. He had the potential to be really good, in my opinion. If I was to guess, I would have said nerves hurt Shazam more than anything else. I feel like that I'm sorry Corey C9 bit is actually exactly the type of thing you think about when a player gets fucked by nerves, where just like he's just so focused and like so trying to avoid fucking everything up that he ends up accidentally shooting his teammate. All right, I think this is all we got for the tier list. I don't think there's anything else to be added. Jame, Shiro, and Woxic are B tier. That's the 3 that weren't on there. And then Brokey is C tier, I think is what I said, right? I think I put him C tier. Or did I put him D tier? I don't know. Whatever I said. I think C tier. This is why people think Chrisj shouldn't be in D tier, isn't it? This is the clip that makes people think Chrisj should be fucking C tier.
Still very much in the round. Oh, Chrisj, he's found 3. It's down to a 2-on-2. Chrisj, can he close this with an ace? Oh my God! Chrisj, the Wolf of Wall Street gets an ace, and it's championship point mouse.